Hello again, friends. Another Friday reading. You may remember where we finished last week. Can I just read it out to you? Waiting with my small case in my hand, I stood at the front door with a lady from the government. In my case, which I took to every new home, were 2 dresses, a cardigan, knickers, pyjamas and socks, and my teddy bear siren suit. I wore my only pair of shoes. When the door opened, a tall lady stood there, and the government lady said to her, "Mrs. Robinson, this is your new evacuee, June Necchi. She is 7 years old, and you must send her to the evacuee school in the town centre." As she left, Mrs. Robinson took me upstairs. "That is your bedroom. Put your case down on the floor at the side of the bed and keep your clothes in there." Pointing to the ceiling, she said, "Don't ever switch that light on. The police will come. The German planes may see the light through the window and drop bombs on us." I thought about the ghosts that might be in the dark room and no lights. "I'll hide under the blankets then," I told myself. That night I washed myself in the bathroom next door to the bedroom, put on my pyjamas, and then ran and jumped into bed and hid under the covers. I didn't want to be disobedient, but I couldn't help switching the light on one night when I went into my bedroom. I was sure I could see a ghost. Mrs. Robinson ran up the stairs. "I heard you switch that light on, and I told you not to because of the police. I'm taking the bulb out now, so you can't switch it on again." The next morning I ran all the way to school. It was the only certainty I had in my life. With so many changes, I felt safe there with the teachers and children who were my only constant in life. I didn't want to go back to Mrs. Robinson, but had no one to tell. I liked it in my school, playing, skipping and hopscotch in the playground with my friends there. The school was in part of a building which printed the local newspaper, The Advertiser, owned by the Withington family next door. They'd welcomed the school, St Gregory's from Margate, when they were escaping from bombings on the south coast. The building, the original John Wood School, built in the 1600s by John Wood, Paternoster Road, London, was in a poor state of repair after the pupils and staff had moved to another location years before. The Advertiser's printing press had been set up there, and at the beginning of the Second World War had offered part of it for the evacuees' schooling. We had 2 classes on the right of the building, divided from each other by long curtains. In one half were pupils aged from 5 to 9, and on the other side of the curtain were the 10 to 14-year-olds. 14 was the school leaving age then. There was one coal burner in front of which each morning crates of small bottles of milk were placed to warm through in the winter. The backyard had a lavatory and a tap in the wall to provide drinking water and hand washing. At the front of the building, overlooking the bowling green, we had the place to play. With lovely open countryside nearby, we were taken on nature walks over the common and down lanes to pick wildflowers and gather autumn leaves. My father visited every 6 weeks to take us to the pictures and to cut my fringe. Every so often, with my fringe growing over my eyes and waiting for my father's visit, my teacher would say, "June Necchi, get your fringe cut." The nearly 4 years I was at St Gregory's gave me the stability necessary for me to cope with separation, its teachers and pupils becoming my family. I remember I loved learning about sums and writing, and in my mind's eye I can still see the small black slates on which we wrote the alphabet and did our arithmetic in white chalk. It was while I lived with Mrs. Robinson that my uncle Eddie was killed in the Arnhem action in Holland. Eddie was 27 and my favourite uncle. So my father sent me a letter telling me of his death. As a solitary child, I spoke to no one about it. In the 1960s, pushing my baby out in time, I saw Mrs. Robinson for the first time since I was a child. She and her husband stopped to speak to me. June, I've never forgotten what you said to me when your Uncle Eddie had died. I asked you why I hadn't seen you crying. And you said, I only think about nice things like fairies. I hadn't realised until hearing that I had found my own way of coping with all the experiences of the war years. I made friends with the children in the street, and each day when I came from school I played with them. Sometimes we went to the nearby park to play on the swings and the slides. Just while I was there I could forget about my family, but only when my friends went home afterwards did I feel lonely again. Mrs. Robinson had a special day each week when she visited a friend who lived a distance away. She told me, June, I visit this friend every Tuesday. When you come from school, you must play in the street until I come back because I take the key with me. One day, big clouds came over while we were playing outside. The lightning sparkled across the sky and thunder rumbled. Quite suddenly, the heavens opened and my friends ran indoors. I stood in the middle of the road, frightened, not knowing where to run to. Mrs. Robinson was still visiting her friend. I knew the house was locked, so ran to the end of the avenue, where a corner shop had a small doorway. Standing there, the heavy rain bounced on this step, soaking my shoes and dress. I was terrified of the thunder and the lightning and put my fingers in my ears. Frightened, I looked around, hoping to see a person, but the roads were deserted. I felt so alone. I felt abandoned and wishing that I could just run to my family, wishing that the war had never happened. Mrs. Robinson came back when the rain had stopped and told me, go upstairs, take your wet clothes off and put them in the airing cupboard. I wanted to have my mother there to help me. One day the government lady came and asked a lot of questions. After then, I had to leave because I wasn't being given good food and had contracted a contagious skin disease. June, there isn't another house for you now, so I'm taking you somewhere and you'll have children to play with. You must call the lady who looks after you, matron, the government lady told me. I had never seen such a big house. It had 2 lots of stairs and very big rooms. The matron took me to a room with lots of beds. She pointed to a bed at the end of the room and said, put your pyjamas on the bed and your case at the side. The lights go off at 8 o'clock, there must be no talking. I heard children's voices outside and asked if I could go out there. Yes. Outside, I asked a child, is this your house? She told me, no, it's an orphanage. We all live here because we don't have any mothers or fathers. Are you an orphan too? No, I have a mummy and daddy. I'm here because of the war, I told her. That night, I curled up in bed shivering and wished that I could see a face I knew, but I was glad that I wasn't an orphan. Thank you for listening, and I hope to meet you again next Friday and continue with my readings.